Hey everyone, and welcome. So glad you could make it to our little study group for PP 5375, Economic Analysis for Public Policy and Management.
All right, today we are tackling the readings from Section 07, which is all about profit maximization and competitive supply. We're going to be pulling a lot from Chapter 8 of our textbook and the lecture presentation to piece this all together. So let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll nail down exactly what a competitive market is. Then, we'll get into the absolute golden rule for maximizing profit. After that, we'll figure out the tough question of when a company should just shut its doors in the short run. And finally, we'll zoom out and see how everything finds its balance in the long run.
You know, when you boil it all down, every single business on the planet, whether it's a tiny coffee cart or a massive car factory, faces this one core question: how much stuff should we make? And that is the exact puzzle we're here to solve today.
Okay, first up, what is a competitive market? Before we can even start talking about what a firm should do, we have to understand the environment it's playing in. You gotta know the rules of the game, right?
So this idea of a perfectly competitive market is really built on three main assumptions. First, price taking. This just means there are a ton of firms all competing, so no single one is big enough to actually influence the price. Think about a wheat farmer. If they try to charge more for their wheat, what happens? Yeah, buyers just go to the next farm over. Second, product homogeneity. This means all the products are basically identical. Corn is corn, a barrel of oil is a barrel of oil. And third, free entry and exit. There's nothing major stopping a new company from jumping into the market or an existing one from getting out. No huge patents or crazy high startup costs.
And here's the crucial takeaway from those three assumptions. They create what we call price takers. The individual firm has absolutely zero say over the price. The market dictates the price, and the firm just has to deal with it. This is huge because it means the demand curve for that one firm isn't the normal downward sloping one you might be thinking of. Nope, it's a perfectly flat horizontal line.
And this right here is the direct result of being a price taker. Think about it. If you sell one more widget, how much extra money do you get? Well, you get exactly the market price for that widget. So for these firms, the price is the same as their marginal revenue, which is also the same as their average revenue. This simplifies things a whole lot, as you're about to see.
All right, so we know the environment, we know the rules. Now let's get to the main event, the decision-making tool that every firm uses. This really is the golden rule of how much to produce.
Now, this might seem super obvious, right? The goal of a firm is to make as much money as possible, to maximize profit. And profit is just your total revenue minus your total cost. The real trick, the whole challenge, is finding that one specific quantity of output where that gap between revenue and cost is as wide as it can possibly be. And here it is. If you remember one thing from today, make it this. A firm maximizes its profit where its marginal revenue equals its marginal cost. The logic is simple. As long as the money you get from making one more item, your marginal revenue, is more than what it costs you to make that item, your marginal cost, you should totally make it. You're making a profit on that specific unit. The second those two numbers are equal, you stop. That is your profit maximizing sweet spot.
Let's make this real with the Peet's Coffee example from the lecture. Look at the table. The price of coffee is $8 a pound, so Peet's marginal revenue is always $8. See how his profit goes up from $13 to $15 when he goes from 4 to 5 pounds? Now, look at that 6th pound. The marginal cost to produce it is exactly $8, which is equal to his marginal revenue. So what happens to his profit? It stays at $15. But if he tries to make a 7th pound, whoops, the cost for that pound is $9, which is more than the $8 he gets for it. His profit actually goes down. See? The rule works perfectly. The magic number is 6.
Okay, quick timeout for a really important distinction. When we economists talk about profit, we mean economic profit. An accountant looks at the money coming in and subtracts the obvious out-of-pocket costs. But an economist goes a step further and also subtracts the implicit costs, the opportunity costs. You know, what else could you have done with that money? What's the return on investment you gave up? It's a much more complete picture of how well a business is really doing.
All right, so maximizing profit is great when times are good, but what happens when they're not? This brings us to a really tough question, the short-run shutdown decision.
So imagine the market price for your product just falls off a cliff. Suddenly, you're losing money. Does that mean you should just lock the doors and go home? Well, believe it or not, the answer is maybe not. Here's the key. You have to look at your variable costs. See, in the short run, your fixed costs, like your rent, are sunk. You have to pay them no matter what, whether you produce 0 units or 1,000.
So, as long as the price you're getting for each item is enough to cover the variable costs of making it, the raw materials, the labor, you should keep producing. Why? Because every sale, even at a loss, contributes something toward paying that rent. It helps you lose less money. But the moment the price drops so low it doesn't even cover your variable cost per unit, that's when you shut down. Now you're just digging a deeper hole with every single item you make.
And you know what's really cool? This whole shutdown logic is exactly where a firm's supply curve comes from. How much will a firm produce at a given price? It'll produce where price equals marginal cost, but only if that price is high enough to be above its average variable cost. So a firm's short-run supply curve is just its marginal cost curve, but only the part that sits above that minimum AVC point.
So far, we've been looking at a firm's choices in the here and now. Let's zoom out. Let's see what happens to the whole market over the long haul, when firms have time to enter and leave.
So picture this. There's a market, and the firms in it are making really great economic profits. This is like a giant flashing neon sign that says, "Hey, great opportunity over here." Because of free entry, what happens? New firms rush in, hoping to get a piece of the action. But when all these new firms start producing, the total supply in the market goes up. Basic supply and demand, right? More supply means the price starts to fall, for everyone. This whole process keeps going. New firms enter, supply increases, price falls, until the price gets pushed down to the point where it just covers the average total cost. And at that point, the party's over. The economic profits are gone, and new firms stop coming in.
Now that phrase, zero economic profit, sounds awful. It sounds like you're failing. But that's one of the biggest misconceptions in econ. It is not a loss. Remember, economic profit includes opportunity cost. So earning zero economic profit means you're covering all your regular costs, plus you're earning a fair, normal return on your time and money. You're doing just as well as you would have in your next best investment. It's actually the sign of a healthy, stable, competitive industry.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Why do we care about all this? As people studying public policy and management, what's the actual takeaway from how some theoretical firm behaves?
This is the really beautiful part. In a competitive market, you have all these firms acting in their own self-interest, just trying to make a buck. But the result of all that competition is something amazing for society. It forces firms to become incredibly efficient, to produce things at the lowest possible cost. And that relentless drive for efficiency is what gives us, the consumers, lower prices and better products.
But what happens when one of our assumptions isn't true? The textbook has a perfect example: New York City taxicabs. For a long time, the city capped the number of taxi medallions, the license to operate, at just over 13,000. That totally violates our free entry rule. And without the threat of new competition, what happened? The supply was kept artificially low, prices stayed high, and medallion owners could earn huge economic profits that never got competed away. It shows just how important those basic assumptions really are.
And that leaves us with one final question to chew on. If you know that competition is eventually going to grind your economic profits down to zero in the long run, why on earth would you ever start a business in the first place? The answer goes right back to the real meaning of economic profit and opportunity cost. It's a great question to think about. Thanks so much for joining the study group, everyone.